So what is the Bengals offense good at doing? Passing the ball. You know, the running game is awful. The running game is awful right now, and I like we need to figure out something to fix that. The passing game is good, and if the Ravens' weakness is passing defense, then I mean the Bengals could potentially put up a lot of points. Don't forget how many points we put up last year. Like I said, 82 points through 2 games. I would say they have a significant test facing them this week. I mean, as significant as any test, really. Obviously, the last 2 weeks, the Ravens have looked a bit vulnerable. But I think the key is the Ravens have only really looked vulnerable at the end of games lately. Like, don't forget, the Ravens jumped out to a huge lead on the Dolphins, and they jumped out to a huge lead on the Bills. And they blew both of those leagues. But the point is, the Ravens are still a very dangerous football team. So if the Bengals can find a way to beat them this week, that's going to be huge for who the Cincinnati Bengals are as a football team.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think the Ravens, I think there's a lot of problems with the Ravens. I don't think they're a good team, quite frankly. I think they got a good quarterback, but I don't think they're a good team. Fine coach, but it kind of feels like Lamar Jackson has to do everything. And a team-based league, team-based sport, you can't force somebody to do everything. So I really just like this game for the Bengals because, like you said, the Ravens, what they're doing is that they have been doing a good job of getting off to these big leads, but they're blowing these leads. Team, they even, I'm pretty sure they even blew a lead to the Jets for no they let the Jets get a lot of second half points, which means that teams are adjusting to them in the second half pretty well. They're not adjusting to the team's adjustments. I really like our chances.
Yeah, I think I think it could be a good game for the Bengals. In particular, I want to note that the Bengals have in fact beat the Ravens 82-38, a combined score of 82-38 over their last 2 meetings. So
Wow.
that's something that
I own the Ravens the last couple games.
Yeah, Joe Burrow in general owns the Ravens. There was like that first meeting he had with them didn't go so well, but outside of that, Joe Burrow pretty much owns the Ravens. The part of the reason for that is Joe Burrow had huge games. Obviously, he threw for like 41 points, but part of the reason is because I think Lou Anarumo has devised a good strategy that a lot of teams I think are starting to copy now when it comes to facing the Ravens. But I think Lou Anarumo has the Ravens figured out. Because his strategy is pretty much what I've been saying for years needs to be the strategy with Lamar Jackson. I'm glad somebody in the NFL finally figured it out. Man, wouldn't it be cool if Lou Anarumo listened to the Battle of Ohio podcast and I gave him the idea? That'd be interesting. But that idea is that you gotta focus more on making Lamar Jackson throw the ball. If you can take away the run game, because you got to focus. He's so good on the run that you got to find ways to slow him down on the run. And if you can stop the Ravens' ground game, you can force Lamar Jackson into situations where he has to throw the ball. And Lamar Jackson is a fine passer. But he can be a bit of an erratic passer sometimes, and he'll make mistakes with the ball if he has to do it enough times. And honestly, I think that's what a lot of teams have been doing lately to come back on the Ravens is they realize that, if you put Lamar Jackson in a situation where he has to throw a ball, there's a decent chance that he's going to make a mistake with it. And you got a much better chance of slowing them down. And this is all chances and percentages. Obviously, Lamar Jackson can beat you in the air if he needs to. But the chances are much higher that you're going to come away with a positive play if he's throwing the ball than if he's running the ball.
You know what's funny to me about the Ravens, and it's crazy. Ever since Lamar, with the exception of his first season, because that was the rookie season, he came in late in the season. If you notice, every single year, the Ravens do the same thing every single year with the Lamar Jackson regime. They started off hot, and then at the end of the season, they tail off. Last year, they had the same exact record as the Browns, with Baker Mayfield with half an arm. And before y'all say Lamar Jackson was injured, before Lamar Jackson got injured, they're on a steady decline because it's worth mentioning that Lamar Jackson threw just as many picks last year as Baker Mayfield. That's something that happened. And he played less games than Baker Mayfield did. This man threw just as many picks as Baker Mayfield and played less games than Baker Mayfield, which tells you something. So what I see what happens with this Ravens team is that they start off hot and then they get caught. They get caught in the year, kind of like how they're blowing on these leagues because people teams start to figure them out. They have this wild, unique strategy, and then people figure them out. Well, now this year the pattern is kind of different. Teams are already figuring it out. It's only week 5. So if they're already 2-2 and they're 2-2 by an inch, like you know how we say the Browns and the Bengals should be 4-0, I think the Ravens should be 1-3. So if they're just like 2-2 by an inch already, and this team is known for getting worse as the season gets on, I don't know.
Well, that is a good point, but you could also make the argument that the Ravens really could be 4-0. With and with an MVP level Lamar Jackson, if they had just finished off their last 2 games, they looked really impressive those first 2 weeks, and they looked really impressive through like half the game the second 2 weeks. It's just obviously what happened, but the Ravens really honestly could be 4-0 right now, kind of like how like you said the Bengals could be 4-0 right now. But I think the difference here is the Bengals definitely did not look nearly as inspiring in their first 2 weeks.
I just feel like they made a lot of critical errors. I feel like they made a lot of critical errors against the Patriots. I watched that Patriots game. I was just like, man, both of these teams are so beatable. And it wasn't the fact that Patriots were shooting themselves in the foot. They're going to take advantage of those errors that the Ravens were making. Regardless of the fact, I think y'all want to beat the Ravens this week. I know I'm not supposed to say that right now, but whatever.
I actually found a really interesting stat that gives me confidence about the Bengals' ability to play at the Ravens. But the Ravens actually ranked dead last in like right now in the NFL. They actually rank dead last in passing yards allowed with 1,261 already allowed on the year, and they're tied. Right, their secondary is terrible. They're tied for the 5th most passing touchdowns allowed with 8. So what is the Bengals offense good at doing? Passing the ball. The running game is awful. The running game is awful right now, and I like we need to figure out something to fix that. The passing game is good, and if the Ravens' weakness is passing defense, then the Bengals could potentially put up a lot of points. Don't forget how many points we put up last year. Like I said, 82 points through 2 games. And it was an even split too. It wasn't even like there was one game where it was like 20-something points, and the other game it was like just an insane number of points. Now this was an even split. They were both like 40-point games.
The only good quarterback they faced was hold up. Who they played? They played the Jets, Joe Flacco, right? They played Mac Jones, and then who else they played? Who's the third? Who's the 4th team they played?
Well, they played Josh Allen. They
lost. I got Josh Allen.
They were kicking Josh Allen's butt in the first quarter, and then
but you're dead last in passing, and 2 teams face was Mac Jones and Joe Flacco.
You could actually I think I could be wrong about this. I don't really remember now, but it might have been Zach Wilson week 1. No, it was Joe Flacco. I remember because that was a big storyline. Joe Flacco going to face his former team.
Who's the 4th team they played?
The team they played last week?
No, they played the Patriots, the Bills, the Jets, and who else?
Dolphins.
Who?
Dolphins.
That
was Tua Tagovailoa's big comeback. Now I will say
I'll give you that one.
Part of the reason that they've allowed so many passing yards is because like the Bills and the Bills and the Jets, like we said, the Ravens almost blew a lead in week 1 to the Jets, but the Ravens, the Jets, the Dolphins, the Jets, and the Bills, they all had to have these massive comebacks, so they're passing the ball. They're put in situations where they have to pass the ball a lot more. So that's probably part of the reason why the Ravens have allowed so many passing yards, is because that's just going to happen. But at the same time, I think their secondary was awful last year, and I think that's a big part of it this year.
No, I just think they're just bad. I just think they're just bad on the road.
So if the Bengals beat the Ravens, and I'm getting this information, by the way, from my new favorite toy, which is the what is it called? The Upshots NFL Playoff Simulator on the New York Times website. They've got, like, you know, they tell you what your chances, like your percentage of chance to make the playoffs based off of like like you pick the games on the schedule, and then it kind of like shifts what's the chance to make the playoffs if this happens and that happens. By the way, hashtag not an ad, just a fan. I'm nerding out with this thing. I think I found this last year near the end of the season, but they got this at the beginning of the season right now, so I can just play with this all day. I can and will play with this all day. My family will never see me again because I found a new toy. But the Bengals currently have about a 50% chance to make the playoffs right now, which is impressive because it was 26.5% like 2 weeks ago when they had that 0-2 start.
I mean, yeah, but you know, Thursday night football helps. So home games and Thursday night football is the greatest thing to ever happen.
Especially
schedule a home game Thursday night football. Yes.
Especially when your quarterback is Joe Burrow and not Andy Dalton. Because if it was Andy Dalton, we would have lost that game because of prime time.
Hey man, look, the Browns haven't lost a Thursday night football game in 4 years.
Well, that's great for you, but your quarterback isn't Andy Dalton.
And two of those wins
in prime time.
Two of those wins were against the Steelers. You suck, Pittsburgh.
That is a good thing. Even as a non-Browns fan, I'm down with that. But the Bengals odds, like I said, they're at about 50% chance to make the playoffs right now. And actually, if the playoffs ended today, the AFC North would be sending 2 teams to the playoffs, and that would be the Bengals and the Browns. The Browns would be the division leaders, and the Bengals would be the wild card team.
Yeah, the playoffs started today. The Browns will win the division. But you know it's crazy. So when y'all beat the Ravens, if the Browns beat the Chargers, and y'all beat the Ravens, I'm not sure how that tiebreaker would go, but I think I might get it.
Well, if we beat the Ravens, our odds jump to 65%. And actually, if the Browns lose, like if the Bengals win and the Browns lose, and it's actually 68% chance to make the playoffs. Now, I mean, if the Browns win, it stays at 65%. So I mean, it's like it doesn't. If you guys win, it doesn't really change much of our chances to make the playoffs. It kind of. I think kind of shifts a little bit, like the chance to win the division, but like it doesn't change our ability to make the playoffs because, you know, we're in good position for the wild card if we beat the Ravens.
Well, yeah, I think I'm gonna make the wild card because again, I keep on saying this. A 9-8 team is going to make the playoffs in the AFC.
Yeah, that's great. We're not going to be 9-8, and we're going to win the division. I'm telling you that.
Y'all gonna be way better than 9-8. I'm just saying. A 9-8 team is going to make the playoffs. I've been screaming that for the rooftop. I'm like, hey, a 9-8 team is going to make the playoffs. I'm like, yeah, Thomas, you're crazy. I see that in the offseason. That's what I love about football.